If I were going to be like trapped on a desert island and I could go to video archives before I was going to get trapped on a desert island, what three movies I would take with Wig is one of the best performances of all time in this movie. This is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest movies ever made.
Some directors love movies. Quentin Tarantino lives inside them. He didn't go to film school, he watched film school. VHS tapes instead of textbooks, double features instead of degrees.
The perfect movie kind of crosses all aesthetics to one degree or another. Might not be your cup of tea, but there's nothing you can say to bring it down.
And while his own films have redefined cinema, from Pulp Fiction to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the truth is Tarantino's style didn't start with him. It started with 6 movies, not the ones he made, the ones he worshipped. These aren't polite picks for critics. They're raw, violent, emotional obsessions. Films that rewired the way he sees characters, sound, tension, and dialogue. Movies that made him jealous, that made him slow down, that made him say, "I'll never top that." And at the end, we'll reveal the one movie Tarantino calls perfect, the one he says doesn't have a single thing wrong with it. This isn't just a list, it's Tarantino's cinematic DNA. Number 1. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966. Directed by Sergio Leone. Quentin Tarantino has said it more than once, and more than once without hesitation. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the greatest directed film of all time. Not one of the greatest, the greatest. And for him, it wasn't just a Western, it was an epiphany. Sergio Leone didn't just reinvent the genre, he blew it wide open. He built a cathedral of violence, silence, and scale. His shots lingered, his characters stared, his music sang, and Tarantino, barely out of adolescence, was hypnotized. He said the final three-way duel in the cemetery might be the single most perfectly constructed sequence in cinema. Not because of action, but because of rhythm, the kind of rhythm that feels more like music than editing. That style bled into everything Tarantino ever did. The standoff in Reservoir Dogs, the buried tension of Kill Bill, the close-ups, the sound cues, the operatic gunfights, all of it traces back to Leone. But it wasn't just technique. Tarantino fell in love with Leone's attitude. The way he let scenes breathe, the way he trusted the audience to lean in, not be spoon-fed. Leone didn't rush, he invited you to linger. And Tarantino learned that a long silence could speak louder than a monologue, that a stare could be dialogue, that violence could be beautiful. To this day, Tarantino says if he could only take one movie to a desert island, it would be The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Because some films don't just inspire you, they claim you. Number 2. Taxi Driver, 1976. Directed by Martin Scorsese, there's Dark, and then there's Taxi Driver Dark. When Tarantino talks about Taxi Driver, it's never just about De Niro's performance or Scorsese's direction. It's about the feeling it left behind, the grime, the rot, the paranoia you could practically smell through the screen. Tarantino has called Taxi Driver one of the greatest examples of a filmmaker diving headfirst into a character's broken psyche and making us ride shotgun the whole way. Travis Bickle isn't a hero. He isn't even really an anti-hero. He's a ticking bomb, and every frame of the film dares us to watch it count down. For Tarantino, this movie wasn't just powerful, it was permission. It gave him the freedom to write damaged characters who didn't need redemption arcs. It showed him you could make a film about alienation, delusion, and violence, and make it feel like art. He also credits Scorsese for blending the streets of New York into the film's bloodstream. The city becomes a character, grimy, chaotic, and bleeding neon. That idea stuck with Tarantino. It's why LA pulses through Pulp Fiction like a living thing, why every diner, motel, or street corner feels real. But what really left its mark? The descent. The slow unraveling of Travis Bickle's mind, mirrored in the swelling Bernard Herrmann score, the dreamlike editing, the horror of how normalized the madness becomes. Tarantino loved that risk, that lack of moral handholding. Because Taxi Driver didn't ask for your comfort, it demanded your complicity. Number 3. Blowout, 1981. Directed by Brian De Palma. Tarantino has never been shy about his love for Brian De Palma, but if he had to choose just one film from De Palma's catalogue, it's always Blowout. To most people, it was just a political thriller with a conspiracy plot. To Tarantino, it was a masterclass in cinematic control. He's called Blowout one of the most heartbreaking thrillers ever made, not just because of the story, but because of how De Palma told it. The split diopters, the long tracking shots, the audio obsession, the way every sound, every whisper, Every click of the tape recorder felt like a clue to something much bigger and darker. The film follows a sound technician, played by John Travolta, who accidentally records what might be the murder of a political figure. But what fascinated Tarantino wasn't just the mystery, it was the hopelessness underneath it. Because in Blowout, even when the truth comes out, it doesn't save anyone. That kind of bleak honesty left a mark. Tarantino often references Blowout as the moment he realized that movies don't have to tie up neatly, that tragedy can be the point, that sometimes the ending hurts, and that's what makes it powerful. It also made Tarantino see Travolta differently. Years later, he cast him in Pulp Fiction, not just out of nostalgia, but because he saw the depth that Blowout had revealed. And here's the twist. Blowout doesn't give you hope. It gives you truth, and dares you to live with it.
Number 4. Rio Bravo, 1959, directed by Howard Hawks. To most, Rio Bravo is just an old-school western. To Tarantino, it's a blueprint for perfect filmmaking. He's called Rio Bravo his desert island movie, the one film he could watch over and over and never get bored. Why? Because it's everything cinema should be. Character-driven, sharply written, effortlessly cool, and endlessly rewatchable. But it's not about gunfights or high-noon showdowns. Rio Bravo thrives in the quiet tension, the camaraderie, the space between the action. Sheriff John T. Chance, played by John Wayne, holds a jailhouse against impossible odds, waiting for backup. It sounds simple, but in Tarantino's eyes, that simplicity is exactly the point. It's the execution that matters. The way Howard Hawks builds suspense without ever rushing, the banter between characters, the understated romance, the deep, wordless loyalty. Tarantino said this movie taught him the value of rhythm, that sometimes slowing things down makes the payoff hit harder, and more than anything, it shaped how Tarantino viewed character dynamics. Dean Martin's broken-down deputy, Ricky Nelson's quiet sharpshooter, Walter Brennan's cranky old-timer. They aren't just sidekicks, they're fully formed, flawed, and human. Tarantino borrowed that formula again and again, crafting ensembles that breathe on screen. There's no flashy plot twist, no dramatic betrayal, just a group of misfits trying to hold the line. To Tarantino, Rio Bravo is proof that sometimes the greatest tension comes not from action, but from stillness, loyalty, and the long wait between the storm.
Number 5. His Girl Friday, 1940, directed by Howard Hawks. Out of all the films Tarantino could have picked from Hollywood's golden age, he chose His Girl Friday, a rapid-fire romantic comedy where the dialogue hits harder than most action scenes. To him, this wasn't just a rom-com, it was verbal warfare polished to perfection. The movie stars Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell as a newspaper editor and his star reporter, who also happens to be his ex-wife, locked in a tug-of-war between career, love, and a breaking news story. The speed of their exchanges? Unreal. Lines overlap, jokes fly like bullets, and every sentence is a game of one-upmanship. For Tarantino, that was electric. He's often said His Girl Friday changed how he thought about dialogue, not as filler between scenes, but as the main event. It's no coincidence that his own scripts crackle with the same energy. Pulp Fiction, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained, those aren't just movies with dialogue, they are dialogue, and it all traces back to Hawks' film. Tarantino admired how His Girl Friday didn't slow down to explain itself. You either kept up or got left behind. It trusted the audience's intelligence, and in doing so, made them lean in harder. He once said this movie taught him that words can be action, that with the right rhythm, a conversation can feel more intense than a gunfight. That's what His Girl Friday gave him. A lesson in speed, wit, and the raw cinematic power of a perfectly timed comeback.
Number 6. Jaws, 1975, directed by Steven Spielberg. When Quentin Tarantino talks about perfect movies, Jaws always comes up, and for good reason. This wasn't just a summer blockbuster, it was a masterclass in suspense. Spielberg's genius was in what he didn't show us. The shark, the terror, the threat, all of it lurking just beneath the surface, mostly unseen. That invisible menace created a dread unlike anything before. Tarantino has said Jaws taught him the power of suggestion, how what you don't show can be scarier than what you do. The film's pacing is surgical, the slow build of tension, the rising panic in the music, the sudden bursts of chaos. It all feels perfectly choreographed. That timing? Tarantino studied it closely. He learned how to let an audience simmer with fear before exploding it into action. Beyond that, Jaws showed Tarantino how to build a myth. The shark wasn't just a creature, it was a force of nature, a symbol of primal fear, a story bigger than its parts. That's a storytelling skill Tarantino respects deeply, visible in his own films where villains become legends and violence feels almost ritualistic. And let's not forget the characters. Brody, Hooper, Quint, three men trapped together, their personalities clashing and melding under pressure. Tarantino admired how Spielberg balanced tension with character, never letting either overshadow the other. For Tarantino, Jaws isn't just a film. It's a perfect storm of suspense, story, and spectacle, a movie where every moment counts and nothing is wasted. That's why he calls it one of the few truly perfect movies ever made. Tarantino's favorite movies aren't just classics. They're his origin story. Leone taught him scale, Scorsese taught him fear, De Palma taught him silence, Hawks taught him rhythm and wit, Spielberg taught him tension. And through it all, Tarantino built his own language, one frame, one line, one needle drop at a time. These 6 films aren't just his influences, they're the ghosts inside every movie he's ever made. So now that you've seen what shaped him, which movie shaped you? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the minds of directors, hit like and subscribe. Because as Tarantino might say, we're not done until the last reel burns.